Art evolves to meet and satisfy our needs. It helps to define us as individuals and also as members of a society. In this episode, we will take a look at how art is used by individuals and society. Purposes and functions of art. Daily use. Visual delight. Communicating information. Public and personal expression. Art for the spirit. And finally, political purposes. We can see that there's a wide range of purposes and functions for art. It defines us and helps to form so many of the things that are important to us. Because our modern society emphasizes individuality and personal achievement, we are most familiar with art that deals with self-expression. However, much art that we will see may serve more than one function or purpose. We may find visual delight or communicating information along with several other categories. Now let's look at art for daily use. Design surrounds us everywhere. Artists such as craftsmen, graphic and industrial designers have created our furniture, our automobiles, smart kitchenwares, to the efficient design of our phones and stylings of our fashion. Let's look at some modern designs for chairs. First, we have the up chair, designed by Gaetano Pesce. This chair was designed in 1969 and was made from polyurethane, which was a revolutionary material at the time. The up chair could be compressed to 1/10 its volume for shipping, and then it would permanently pop into shape once opened. The chair's most noteworthy feature is its feminine shape. Pesce stated that the chair is meant to have a feminine form with a ball at the foot, which represents the traditional image of a prisoner with a ball and chain. This piece was intended as a statement about violence against women. This is the Louis Ghost Chair, which is a playful design by Philippe Starck, inspired by the legendary French classic chair named for King Louis XVI, the last king of France before the fall of the monarchy during the French Revolution. Starck's popular design is molded out of a single unbroken piece of plastic and is designed for indoor and outdoor use. The chair holds up well against the elements because it's plastic and has no joints that could crack or warp from exposure. It's also light and stackable. Visually, the transparent chair seems to dissolve into its environment. Look at this dreamy interior and beautiful lounge chair and ottoman designed by Charles and Ray Eames from 1946. This chair is not only incredibly comfortable, but its clean lines, molded wood, warm wood grains, and soft, inviting black leather has made this a staple of classic mid-century modern furniture and design. The tongue chair was created in 1967 by the designer Pierre Paulin. Paulin thought the manufacturing of chairs was somewhat primitive, so he began exploring new processes. With this chair, he said he was trying to appeal to the lifestyle of young people at the time that were into low-level living. Its curvilinear form demonstrates innovative construction methods and synthetics that allowed Paulin to make highly sculptural, upholstered furniture in the 1960s. As we can see, good design can bring us not only function, but great enjoyment as well. Now let's look at these mesmerizing West African textiles called kente cloth. This is a vendor selling kente cloth along the roadside near the capital of the Ashanti region in Ghana. It's believed this style of textile production may have its origins as far back as 1000 BC from the Akan people of the Ivory Coast and the Ewe people of southeastern Ghana. Initially, this cloth was associated with the Asantehene, or the ruler, who was the only one permitted to wear it. Over time, anyone with enough money could purchase it, but you could not wear the same design as the Asantehene. Kente cloth is associated with wealth, high social status, and cultural sophistication. This beautiful fabric may have even helped garner Ruth Carter the Oscar for Best Costume for Black Panther in 2019. Next, we move on to art for visual delight. We are probably most familiar with this idea of art as a kind of visual pleasure, like eye candy. Here we have a giant flower puppy by the contemporary artist Jeff Koons. He had stated that the puppy plus flowers equals optimism and security within us. A very sentimental statement indeed. This is located at the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao in northern Spain. The sculpture's 42 feet high with a stainless steel structure that's kind of like an airplane fuselage, and it holds around 38,000 flowers such as petunias, impatiens, marigolds, and begonias. These are replaced twice a year in April and October. The puppy is in reference to the 18th century formal gardens found in many places around the world, such as England. The topiary nature of the puppy is similar to many of the topiary plants found in these gardens. Topiary is the horticulture practice of trimming plants to maintain clean shapes, whether geometric or animals. Now let's discuss the term aesthetics. Aesthetics is the philosophy of art, focusing on questions regarding what is art, how it's evaluated, the concept of beauty, and the relationship between the idea of beauty and the concept of art. Essentially, it's the branch of philosophy that studies how and why artworks are considered beautiful. The term aesthetics can also apply to ideas of personal beauty and adornment, which vary considerably across cultures, groups, and time. Think of how you want to appear to others. What do you wear? How do you style your hair? What kind of makeup and jewelry, etc.? This is all part of your personal aesthetic. Different cultures have different ideas of personal beauty. For example, the Maasai, who are semi-nomadic people located in Kenya and northern Tanzania and East Africa, consider being tall, white teeth, bald, or short hair with elongated earlobes to be very attractive. They traditionally dress in animal skins. However, the typical Maasai dress of today consists of red garments called shuka wrapped around the body and loads of beaded jewelry placed around the neck and arms. These are worn by both men and women and may vary in color depending on the occasion. In the Polynesian island country of Samoa, strong, broad-shouldered, heavier-set individuals are considered attractive. In 2013, Samoa's Prime Minister called for his nation's women to stay away from international beauty contests because, he said, they favor skinny and scrawny-looking women. Are we socially conditioned to think about beauty in our own culture? Yes. Are you disgusted by hairy armpits? Whenever I discuss this with students, I usually hear groans of disapproval when asking whether women should keep their armpit hair like most men do. There is no correct answer, only a socially conditioned answer. Had you been born into another culture or time, you would no doubt share the same aesthetics and values of that particular culture or time. Evolutionary psychologists suggest that the emotion of disgust, which protects humans by reminding them not to get too close to things that can carry disease, like excrement or corpses, can be triggered by learned prompts as well. It's a primitive way of preserving cultural norms or in-group or tribal status. Maybe some of our ideas of beauty have some basis in the evolution and development of our early ancestors. Look at these swimsuits covering a span of around 50 years. Even a cursory glance at women's swimsuit fashions in modern times reflects society's change in thinking regarding ideas of beauty, modesty, and suggests the growing women's suffrage movement. In the 19th century, women were expected to wear these sorts of dresses that were made out of heavy fabric, so the fabric wouldn't float, which would protect the modesty or decency of the woman without revealing anything. This couldn't have been much fun for women at the time. Just think. Now people will wear something akin to dental floss. Wow, how the times have changed. In many cultures, something is beautiful if it exhibits idealism, which means something that is close to perfection. Classical Greek figures represent a pursuit of the ideal. This is a Roman marble copy of a Greek bronze statue called Doryphorus, spear thrower, by Polykleitos from the 5th century BC. In this, Polykleitos established a canon of proportions, setting ideal correlations among body parts to create a perfect man and impose order on human movement. This work was discovered in a palestra or gymnasium in Pompeii, Italy. This statue served as a model for Roman athletes to aspire to. This would be no different than walking into a gymnasium today and seeing perhaps a poster of a basketball star leaping high up into the air, something to aspire to. Another common way of thinking about beauty includes a pleasing balance of harmonious proportions. This painting is a work by French artist Claude Lorraine, who is best known for ideal landscape painting. He sought to present a view of nature more beautiful and harmonious than nature itself. This landscape was completely invented by Lorraine. His work were so admired that they influenced landscape gardening in Britain. The landscapes were termed picturesque in reference to Lorraine's work. Look at the gracefulness and well-proportioned calligraphy on this plate from the 10th century Iran. Calligraphy is the art of beautiful handwriting. This is an Arabic proverb in Kufic calligraphy made for a cultured owner. It states that knowledge, although bitter at first taste, is ultimately sweeter than honey. A delightful idea. I want to quickly share with you the incredibly delightful video art of Jennifer Steinkamp. Using cutting-edge digital technology such as the kind used by Pixar, Steinkamp creates mesmerizing and enchanted animated video installations that project onto walls and other surfaces. They are remarkably precise and large, absolutely wonderful. In this work called Impeach from 2019, you can see it on the wall there, she works to capture the lighting of the Dutch still life paintings for these luscious fruits that dance and collide playfully into one another. In another similar work, she's even experimented with making the work interactive by using VR sensors, so the fruit can be manually controlled. This work is precisely projected into a door frame. Isn't that enchanting? Wow. This is one of my favorite. This amazing work called Eye Catching was a site-specific work for the Istanbul Modern in 2003. It's responding to the giant upside-down Medusa heads in the Yurbatan cistern and the power of female sexuality to invoke fear and paranoia in men. Such a powerful contrast to see these wiggling trees projected into such a dramatic and historic location. Art for communicating information. In fact, art can be a very effective device to impart information and ideas because it's so easily understood by the many. Aside from scribes, monks, and the wealthy, most people in history were illiterate. The church during the Middle Ages understood this and used religious imagery on stained glass and stone carvings to provide religious instruction and educate people about the stories from the Bible. This is the Tree of Jesse from the Chartres Cathedral in France in the year 1170. This is a depiction in art of the ancestral lineage of Jesus Christ, which begins at the bottom panel where we find a sleeping Jesse of Bethlehem, the father of King David, who has a branching tree emerge out of him. This is actually the original use of the family tree as a schematic representation of a genealogy. This is a fun section because we get to look at pictures that tell us stories. We love stories because they help us to understand and create connections with others. We can feel empathy with characters that we encounter in stories, and stories can enrich and provide guidance for our lives. Now let's look at some work that illustrates and visually amplifies one of the great stories in literature, the Inferno from the Divine Comedy. The Divine Comedy is an epic poem written by the Italian Dante Alighieri in the 14th century. It's divided into three parts: the Inferno, Purgatory, and Paradise. In this story, Dante has to travel through the layers of hell in order to find his dead love, Beatrice, who is watching over him in heaven. She sends the shade, or ghost, of the Roman poet Virgil, who is spending eternity in limbo. Virgil is a pagan that is adrift in the Christian afterworld. He guides Dante and helps him make his way to her. At the beginning, Virgil finds Dante in the dark woods, led astray from the path of righteousness by his own sinful inclinations. At the gates of hell, Dante sees a warning: "Lasciate ogni speranza voi incontrate." Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Dante gives us one of the most elaborate and vivid descriptions of hell. In the poem, hell is depicted as 9 concentric circles of torment located within the earth. It's the realm of those who have rejected spiritual values by yielding to bestial appetites or violence, or by perverting their human intellect to fraud or malice against their fellow men. Let's look at some artistic imaginings of a few of these circles. This is the first circle of Dante's hell, called limbo. Limbo is the afterlife condition of those who die in original sin without being assigned to the hell of the damned. The word limbo comes from the Latin word limbus, meaning edge or boundary, referring to the edge of hell. Dante's first circle of hell is resided by virtuous non-Christians and unbaptized pagans who are punished with eternity in an inferior form of heaven. They live in a castle with 7 gates which symbolize the 7 virtues. Here, Dante sees many prominent people from classical antiquity, such as Homer, Socrates, Plato, Cicero, Hippocrates, and Julius Caesar, among others. As Dante and Virgil descend into hell, they pass through the second circle of hell, circle of the lustful, where the souls of sinners who gave themselves over to sexual pleasures are punished by being transformed into a whirling cyclone or driving whirl. They are punished by being blown violently back and forth by a tempest or strong winds, which prevents them from finding peace and rest. Just as in life their intense passions toss them around, so now they are violently thrown inside the whirlwind. Dante sees many notable people from history and mythology, including Cleopatra, the Carthaginian queen Dido, Achilles, Helen of Troy, the Trojan Paris, and others who were adulterous during their lifetime. Here, according to Dante, they encountered 2 shades who were so closely tied together that they seemed to fly as one. Identifying themselves as Paolo and Francesca, the pair agreed to speak with Dante. Remember this work? The Kiss by Auguste Rodin? This is Rodin's portrayal of Paolo and Francesca from the Inferno. Francesca was forced to marry for political reasons, but fell in love with her husband's younger brother, Paolo. When Paolo's brother Giovanni discovered their affair, he killed them both in a rage. Francesca tells Dante that the two were reading the tale of Guinevere and Lancelot, the Arthurian characters who succumb to their love for each other and engage in an extramarital affair that leads to the fall of Camelot. As Paolo and Francesca learned, quote, how love had mastered Lancelot. We went pale as we caught each other's glance, end quote. Coming to the part of the story where Guinevere finally gives in to Lancelot's love for her, Paolo, quote, trembled to place his lips upon my mouth. That day we did not read another page, end quote. After hearing this, Dante is overwhelmed with pity and cries so hard that he faints. Before Romeo and Juliet, Paolo and Francesca were literature's real-life, star-crossed lovers. Jumping to the 5th circle of hell, wrath. Dante and Virgil try to cross the river Styx in order to reach the city of Dis, but the river is filled with dangers, such as tormented souls and evil creatures trying to capsize their vessel. In the 5th circle, the wrathful and slothful are punished. In the swampy, stinking waters of the river Styx, the wrathful fight each other viciously in the slime, unable even to express themselves as they gurgle and choke on their rage. In this painting by French academic painter William Adolphe Bouguereau, Dante and his guide Virgil are in the 8th circle of hell, looking on as 2 damned souls are entwined in eternal combat. One of the souls is an alchemist and heretic who was burned, named Capocchio. He is being bitten on the neck by the trickster Gianni Schicchi, who committed fraud to claim another man's inheritance. The 8th circle of hell contains those who commit fraud or who are imposters. The Inferno describes constant fighting as one of hell's many punishments, and Bouguereau chose to zoom in on 2 damned souls from the epic poem in order to emphasize their physical pain. We can see the Roman poet Virgil covering his mouth as he witnesses this horror. Only the bald, bat-winged demon hovering over them seems to take any pleasure in the scene. Such a frightful image. The 9th and final circle of hell contains those who have committed treachery. One of the members in this circle is the 13th century Italian Count Ugolino, who is imprisoned and starving with his children because of treachery against his nephew. In hell, Ugolino relates to Dante how, in a moment of despair, quote, "I bit both hands for grief, and they, thinking I did it for hunger, suddenly rose up and said, 'Father,' and offered him their own flesh as food." Here we see the moment when Ugolino contemplates cannibalism. In the 9th circle, Dante reserves the worst place in hell for the betrayer. In the very center of hell is Lucifer, who is waist deep in a frozen lake. Every time he flaps his wings, it produces a cold wind that continuously freezes the ice around him, as well as the other sinners. Lucifer is a giant with 3 heads, 3 horrible faces of different colors, and 6 eyes that are crying. There is a sinner in each of his 3 mouths. The mouth in the center chews Judas Iscariot, the traitor to Jesus Christ. The other 2 mouths chew Brutus and Cassius, the betrayers and murderers who killed Julius Caesar. Lucifer's mouths are eternally tearing the sinners to pieces without completely killing them. This image is ultimately horrifying, and even Dante remains speechless in the presence of Lucifer, the greatest sinner of them all, and the one who suffers the most. Despite being over 700 years old, the Inferno is still a remarkable work of literature today and has inspired countless profound and moving artworks. Moving on from Dante's Inferno, let's take a look at the Death of Sardanapalus by the 19th century French Romantic painter Eugene Delacroix. This was inspired by a work from Lord Byron on the reimagining of the last Assyrian king, Ashurbanipal, from the 7th century BC. The Greeks knew him as Sardanapalus and described him as a decadent figure who spends his life in self-indulgence and dies in an orgy of destruction. In this, Sardanapalus has learned that the enemy has breached the citadel walls and are coming. So what does he do? He commands that everything he owns be brought in front of him and destroyed. Looking disinterested, Sardanapalus sits on his richly draped red bed, watching as his possessions are destroyed. This includes not only luxury goods, but also people, slaves, concubines, and animals. After the destruction, the king is to die on his bed, and then his bed and body are to be burned as a funeral pyre. Perhaps the collapsing woman or lover on the bed is wanting to die on the funeral pyre with her lover. Wow, this is what you would call a scorched earth policy. Destroy everything, leave nothing for the enemy. Here we have a reimagining of the Death of Socrates by the neoclassical painter Jacques-Louis David. David used much of his art to encourage reformist patriotism and stoicism during the French Revolution. In fact, he was Napoleon's favorite painter. Here, he tells the story of the death of the Greek philosopher Socrates. In this story, Socrates has been convicted of corrupting the youth of Athens and introducing strange gods, and has been sentenced to die by drinking hemlock. We see his students hunched over and emotionally pleading with Socrates. But Socrates is strong and upright, as he uses his death as a final lesson for his pupils rather than fleeing when the opportunity arises. He faces his death calmly, showing strength over passion, with a commitment to an abstract ideal. Socrates reasoned that death is either annihilation, which is a complete and final sleep, like the deepest slumber when you awake and remember nothing, or death is a transmigration where one's soul would live on somewhere else. If death is annihilation, it's to be looked forward to, as we would look forward to a deep, restful sleep. On the other hand, if death is a transmigration to some sort of afterlife, that afterlife will be populated by all the great figures from the past, from the great poets like Homer and their heroic subjects like Odysseus. Socrates remarks how delightful it would be to pass amongst these great figures, questioning them regarding their wisdom. The most widely read account of the death of Socrates is told by Plato in the Phaedo. And here we see Plato sitting at the end of the bed with the story of the death of Socrates almost appearing to emanate from the back of his head. Socrates wrote nothing down, but two of his students, the historian Xenophon and the philosopher Plato, recorded the most significant accounts of Socrates' life and philosophy. As we can see, art is a powerful vehicle for delivering and communicating our most moving and powerful stories in a way that can be understood by the many. This concludes part 1 of our lecture, The Purposes and Functions of Art. Thank you.